breathe for a minute. Let the beat breathe for a minute. Breathe for a minute. Let it breathe for a minute.
All right. Hey, we are back with another great episode of Social Reality. I've been away for a while. Please excuse my absence. I had some things going on. But it's good things. Back with my partners here. We got the queen in the room, Esther. We got the man Theus in here, and my boy Antoine, my partner for over 30 years.
Antoine.
All right. So we got good talk today. We got real good talk
It's
today.
about to be lit today.
Hey, I'm telling you, hey, all right. You're gonna learn today. So so we're gonna go into this storming of the castle, if you will. The storming of the Capitol building down there, up there in DC. So as always, I always start with the lady of the room, Esther. You wanna get into it and get in there in on it?
Man, okay. So what we saw on January 6th was white terrorism and white rage. That's all that was. It was a whole full-on, as they call it, vanilla ISIS, because that's exactly what it was. They're trying to do a coup, on the government. And it's funny to me because, I was watching all these different news stations, and all the white folks are like, oh my God, like, I can't believe this is happening. And, this is not our America. And I'm like, are y'all serious right now? Like, Black people, and I know they knew that all along. Like, what did you think was going to happen? Then, what really pissed me off was just the hypocrisy. Like, I was watching these folks on social media during the summer when Black Lives Matter were doing their peaceful protest. I actually went to the George Floyd protest, which was like a huge protest in Atlanta. And they were like, what are they marching for? They were mad. Mind you, when I went to that protest, though, it was one of the most beautiful experiences I ever had. I mean, I saw it was like equal Black and equal white people are, they came with their kids. They came out with water, and it wasn't a shred of violence or anything. Peaceful protesting, and that bothered them, right? And they're like, oh, what are you crying about? You know what I'm saying? If you don't like it, just leave, blah, 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 But then when you're actually watching this play out on national TV, and mind you, this is while they were in session, okay? Mike Pence was there, the vice president. Now we're finding out that Melania Trump was there for some kind of photo shoot that she was doing. A whole bunch of senators were there. And that just shows you how this man doesn't give a damn about anybody. He doesn't give a damn about, his kids, his wife, Pence. And, they're like, oh, at least, it's not half as bad as how, it was in the summer when they were looting and rioting. But what's funny to me is, you guys, when you saw looting and rioting, and let's be clear, let's be real here. There are low lives in every race. Asians have their low lives. Hispanics have their low lives. Blacks have their low lives. Whites have plenty of low lives, as we saw January 6th. So how come when we are trying to fight for for them to see us as a human being, for them to, not even treat us equal, because really and truly, like, when have we ever really been equal, right? But just to actually, treat us humanely, right? And they're like, so you see these low lives, which happen to be Black, and it erases the whole movement. Oh, they're just looting, and that's what they do, right? But yet, when you saw your own white terrorists sit there and terrorize the Capitol, you're going to sit there and you didn't say, oh my God, white people are bad. White people are terrorists. Look at them looting. You're like, oh, those are patriots. They're patriots. And they're just set up. And it's not as violent. Well, newsflash. I was just looking at CNN. There's like videos coming in where they said that it's actually far worse than what we first thought, okay? It's just with all the chaos. One reporter said that Trump supporters actually cornered her, was breaking her camera, and was dragging her, and she's yelling because she thought she was going to die. Nobody helped her. She was actually able to get away and hide. All right. They said that another cop, since they say Blue Lives Matter, they killed one because they bludgeoned them. All right, like an animal with a fire extinguisher. Mind you, this man served in the military, went down range, I think to Afghanistan or Iraq, came back. Wasn't he? His brother said that he wasn't even supposed to really be working. He was trying to get some overtime, only to be killed while you try to do some overtime and get some money by a white terrorist. But they're saying it's not that bad, okay? And on top of that, had they been there when all the representatives were in the building, because they were crying out, bring Mike Pence out. And that noose that they had outside, that noose was for Mike Pence.
Right, they were saying hang Pence. They had a noose.
Right. So imagine if Ilhan Omar was in there. Imagine if AOC was in there. Pelosi. It would have been a slaughter. It would have been 10 times worse. And now all of a sudden, everybody's like, oh, you know, this is a disgrace. This is not America. How did this happen? No. You're all complicit. From Twitter, from everybody who gave him a platform, from the media, Mitch McConnell. I mean, it's a list of people, and we are not just gonna let you sit there and with your hypocrisy and your bullshit and your fake shock and indignation, and you sitting there now. No, because now all eyes on you, and we're about to hold everybody accountable, because now for the first time they're acting like they're shocked and they're surprised, like, oh my God, like, you know, there's such a blatant difference in how, you know, they're treated by the police for this coup, and Black Lives Matter and Black people. Seriously, we only been telling you that shit for 400 years. Like, be for real. We're gonna start holding people accountable. But I'm glad that it happened. You know what I'm saying? I'm glad that it happened, because America, your chickens came home to roost. You made this monster, and make no mistake, Trump is not like, when they say racism, Trump is a symptom. Okay, he just put that shit on steroids.
Right. To kind of piggyback on something you said, Esther, you're saying that their chickens have come on the roof. Along with that, it seems like our race is the only race that they tell us it doesn't matter what happens to us. We're the only ones that are being told to get over it.
Yeah.
To just get over it. So now, why can't you just get over it that your boy lost? You know what I'm saying? Now, y'all are the ones that don't want to let go. You know, you're the ones that are killing your own for having a difference of opinion.
And honestly, Cortez, it's the hypocrisy for me. The whole, you know, I thought, does Blue Lives matter or doesn't it matter anymore? You know what I'm saying? Is this a law and order president, or, you know, is he just about resurrection now? So I'm just confused, because it just seems that it flip-flops and nobody holds anybody accountable when it flip-flops. But when it's the Black community, it's monolithic. Like, it's like, listen, this is what it is. This is how these people are. And we, you know, any mistake or anything that we make, it's the whole race that has to carry it. But when it's dumb, it's just one individual. You know what I'm saying? And that's the part that I just have an issue with. And also, you know, I was kind of sad a little bit that it took away from, you know, the victory that we did have by having Reverend Warnock and John Ossoff in the Senate seat. So congratulations to you both. But yeah, it was just ridiculous.
Antoine, you got something you want to put in before I say something, bro?
Yeah. So for me, it was like, as you said, it was the chickens coming on a roost. But for me, I said in our post, I put that I said it was the first time that white privilege had to face white supremacy, right? And they're both undergirded by racism. But it was the first time that good, civilized, decent, you know, white people had to actually see the veracity and the beast that they created when they have racism. All the times they put it underneath the rug and, you know, put it in the corner. It's not really them, and they don't have to really worry about it. But all that's been seething for 400 years. It's in this country. It all came. It came to a head. Not to say it hasn't come to a head before, because it has happened before. It has happened on many occasions. I can think of Rosewood. I can think of Tulsa.
Oklahoma.
I can
Those are
think
kind of
of
different.
a lot
Those
of
are
things.
different. They were coming after us. I'm talking about them on them.
I mean,
No,
they're coming
That'd be the
after
Civil
us
War.
because of election and the Civil War. That's the other one. So,
Right.
but to understand how how a concentration of a mob mentality when they're together in a mob, how they when they have an ideology and how they move. So we knew about that. We weren't surprised by it, but I was just happy to see that we weren't. Because they tried to blame it on us saying there was Antifa and stuff like that. But
Yeah,
Antifa would have
Black
never
Lives
done
Matter.
anything like that.
No,
No, they would have never done that. They would never. First of all, Antifa would have put a mask on. First of all, that's the first thing they would have
but
done. They would
Antifa is
never
not
gone without a
even
mask.
a real organization.
I wouldn't even
But it
put
was,
Antifa in the discussion just
yeah,
because
it wouldn't even be
it's a
there.
smoke screen. Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't even be there. They try to. What I'm seeing now is the point is trying to make it seem like there are like trying to minimize it, try to deflect and stuff like that. But what it is just it's the same play that they run always. To me, it's not surprising they do the same play. It's gonna be like, oh, it's not really that bad. But really, to me, what I look at it as is even worse than that. This could have been a mass casualty event that would have crippled the entire government, right?
Yes.
If those people had pipe bombs in their bags,
Yes.
and the guy that had pipe bombs in his bag had 12 pipe bombs in his bag, and he came almost 3 hours before the event, so he was looking to put these bombs somewhere.
Oh yeah.
Right. So now my thought was that so if you had a mass casualty event that happened with that many people in a congregated place, if he had got Congress, our government would have been at its knees, right? We would have had a dictator for sure because now at this point we would have had Trump as the only sole power with no checks and balances whatsoever, right? So what it also made me realize is that if I was a foreign agitator and I saw how a couple of rednecks, clampets, could come up and push through and get that close to the heart of your government.
Come on.
What could I do with what's up, Jose?
Go in the mix. Don't stop for me. Go say it, man. Say what you was about to say.
If that would have happened, you would have had you had a special forces. We have SEAL 6 or whatever. But if a Russian force that came in or a Iranian force or something like that came in, they could have put our government in a serious bad position, right? Sometimes it's not. We could be the stupidest people try to expose our own weaknesses, and that's what I think we did. I think we exposed our weaknesses, and I'm right now for the inauguration. I'm afraid I wouldn't even go to the inauguration because that right now looks like a perfect terrorism event.
Yeah, it'd be the perfect danger zone for somebody.
They talk about preserving their democracy and preserving their country, but what all they really done is they've shown their country's ass. They've shown the weakness of the country. They show that if you want to take us over, this is how you can do it.
That's
you know
how
what I'm saying?
do it.
So for me, I'm just like it's embarrassing. Like and you can never tell me anything about Black Lives Matter. You can't talk to me like that because the hypocrisy is so strong right now. It stinks. The air just stinks of it.
But I mean, Antoine, America has always been brought to you by the letter H for hypocrisy because it's a bunch of hypocrites. You know what I'm saying? So
right.
That's
always.
Now, one thing I'd say, I'll try not to wax on. All right. So first of all, I look at what happened on the 6th as it's just a flashlight being shown on stuff we've already known. And it's actually a great opportunity if we look at it the right way. So we're going to come back to messaging, right? So when you look at CNN, MSNBC, everybody was covering what was going on. You could literally see, as Antoine was saying, you could see white privilege trying to reconcile with itself what was happening as white supremacy was pushing up against it, even though we on the outside have long known or should have long known that white privilege can only exist because of the vanguard of white supremacy. Like they make it possible. But this was the first time that instead of that fire being directed at others, they were seeing it coming back their way. But to say one thing about what you were saying, Antoine, And I know I'm a little bit different than some, to say it mildly. I wasn't embarrassed at all. And also, I would also say, I'm not gonna say I was proud, because it's still an attack on my country. That's my home. But I wasn't embarrassed, because when I look at it, really almost no one else could have had that same um, impact or progress. So let's say we use as an example a foreign force. First of all, we would treat them as invaders from the start. So the military, the National Guard, the Capitol Police, they all would have been on alert and moving in unison to reject it. It was only because they were dealing with a force that they personally just refused to reconcile as a threat. It was cognitive dissonance at its finest, right? Because just a couple of weeks ago, they had the rally downtown in DC where they defaced the different churches. They were beating up people on the street, and the police response was lackluster at best. Then for the next 2 or 3 weeks, we're told this was coming. Like, I'm not even in in those areas.
They're checking their chatter.
Right. So it was in 4chan or 8chan, whatever they call it now. It was in the dark web. It was on Facebook. It was on Instagram. CNN and all of them were also talking about, they were worried about what would happen on the 6th. This was all foretold. But because they really have a hard time looking at themselves as a threat, they constantly view themselves as someone that can be reasoned with. So then when that happened and Trump says, let's take it to Congress, and that guy Pence, who's been licking my boots for the last 5 years, he's part of the problem too. So that's when the chant of "Go get Pence" started up, right? So,
like I said, like I've always said, Republicans are strong as their weakest link. When they find that weak link, they throw them to the wall.
Well, it's not even, for me, it's not even that. So all that stuff, not to like relitigate the facts, because we all know like how the events were unrolling, but I really want us as a community to pay attention to what's going on, and then we can stop being surprised or offended or shocked by things that we know are the case. We know they are treated differently. So don't be surprised when they're treated differently, but learn what are the tactics that they use so that you know how to see it when it's coming and react when you need to. And that's what I kind of get from that. Plus, if you're going up against someone, you know, if they're broken up and scattered, aren't they by definition easier to fight than a cohesive unit? So right now is an excellent opportunity for all of the marginalized communities to not even if we bind with each other, but bind amongst each other. And we say, you know what, right now there is so much discord in the white community when it comes to Republicans, conservatives, liberals, Trumpists, you name it, they're all freaking out right now because they don't know what to do with it. This is the time that we start pushing things that we want. This is the time that we start talking louder in Biden's ear. This is the time where we start getting people ready to be primaries for these different people who are in the seats, right? Because we now know that they are so confused that they're creating new narratives, right? They're like, first it was a rally, then it was a protest, then it was a revolt, and now we're back to just being disenfranchised and misled. What? The only reason that would be confusing is if you're listening to their messaging. What is it that we're after? That's what I would say we got to stay on. And now I'll shut up.
Hey, I appreciate that, Theus. Got another long time friend of mine who has joined. My man
Somebody
Jose.
just pull a Giuliani.
What's going on, Jose? How you doing, man?
What's up, Cortez? How you doing?
Been a long time,
brother.
Been a long time. Hey,
yeah.
so you know, if I'm sure you caught up to speed pretty quickly. We're just trying to get everybody's opinion on how they feel about these most recent events. Care to weigh in on it for us, bro?
Yeah, well, peace to everybody, and I enjoyed listening to what everybody had to say so far. And all, valid. It's an important time to have a forum to voice, how you feel. you know. Um, and I just think there's so many angles to look at here. And you know, one of the things I think is important to look at that means most to me is what Antoine said, because you know, the philosophy of white supremacy can be adopted by anybody. The white supremacists are not just white people, it's black people, brown people, Asian people who believe in white supremacy. And in order to believe that, you have to believe if that exists, so does the polar opposite. So if you believe in white supremacy, you believe in black inferiority or native indigenous inferiority. You believe if that group is that powerful, I must be somehow inferior. Now, not all of us adopt the I, but as a group, you can see it. And it's exemplified, you know, in my law enforcement career, it's exemplified by people being issued badges, retreating from people in the Capitol building when they're supposed to double tap whoever walks through the door. Okay? And like, what's my brother, Complex Mind, Simple Man?
Theus.
Yeah.
What's up, man?
Thea said, what did you say, Thea? She said, Paul Mooney had said this years ago, 27 years ago, on his Race and Masterpiece albums. He said, you know, these white judges see each other, see their children, and see their colleagues when they're judging them and giving them lenient sentences. He's just using that as an example, as an anecdote. But it's the idea that, you know, white people are always reasonable with each other. I can reason with. This is why you see these guys trying to get suicide by cop, and the cop refuses, thankfully, of killing these men. You know, they chase them down, they waving bats, you know, and these guys live. And we over here trying to get in the vehicle or announce I have a weapon, and it's concealed with the permit, and we dead. You know, our friends are dead for that. So I just think there's so much beyond this moment to look at, and to look at the scope of the real reality. And this is just our opportunity here to experience what our ancestors and our grandparents, just our grandparents, experienced. This is new for white people. It should not be new for us, but it is new for some of us who think that we're in some new world where racism doesn't exist or white supremacy does not exist. And that's unfortunate, because that's a lack of conscientiousness and consciousness on behalf of our communities. But I go straight to Rosewood. You know, I go straight to Tulsa, Oklahoma. I go straight to the city I'm in, Olympia, Washington. We had a Chinatown here. They burnt it down. They burnt down the one in Tacoma, Washington. Those Chinese people had to go to Seattle or Portland, where the last two Chinatowns north of California are. And this is a history. This is not new. And the fact that people have to deal with it now, I think is a good thing, in the way that the next step is how are you going to prepare? How are you going to be prepared for if this arrives at your door? Because, you know, I think of Dr. Layla Africa. And he said, if you want to know how the Black people in the Bahamas act, look at who owned them. He said, if you want to know how the Black people in St. Louis act, look at who owned them. And there's a very different way that we are in the United States of America. You know, there's different types of slavery. None of them were good, but we were raised by the worst of white people in the world.
Well, was that the same one? Was that the same gentleman that was saying, if you wanted to see how Black people act and how they discipline their kids, that was how the white people? Okay, I did see that. I did see that. Yeah, so we adopted the slave master's way of doing things. So that's what we taught was the right. When they said Black children were evil, so we got to beat the evil out of them. Yeah.
Now look, I'm gonna just say this, because these are everlasting points I'm trying to make, not just related to this incident, because I don't look at it as some monumental incident. I know some people are really shocked by this, and some of us are, and that's okay too. I'm not talking, you know, like, well, you're a sucker for thinking it's shocking. It's horrible. But if you are surprised by this, that's part of the problem. That's part of the problem. Okay, our white family in this country has shown us who they are. And I understand the plea of why don't you care about us? But if you're still asking them that, after all that happened to your parents Just think of your parents. You don't got to go that far back. But I'm going to go to my mother. I'm going to go to my grandmother. When my mother was born, Black people couldn't vote, and I'm of mixed heritage. And none of my people have had a good time dealing with our white family here. And part of that's because of what Thea said, is they can reason with themselves, but to us, we're almost subhuman.
Yes.
And I'll just say, I brought up that point of who raised who, because our Spanish colonies and French colonies and the Portuguese colonies where slavery was, the difference was they allowed Africanness to be existent there. So there was still some semblance of identity allowed for the groups to be together. That's why Haiti should be our heroes. They're some of the most African. That's right. They're some of the most African of us, and they're the most vilified for it. And they're the only ones who freed themselves and still the most vilified for that. But it was
still the poorest too, and still the poorest to this day.
Even though it's one of the wealthiest land masses.
That's exactly
100%. No, 100%, man, 100%. So yeah, so for me, once again, it still comes back to, as part of what Jose was hitting on, man. It's about how are we viewing things? What lens are we going to process this thing through? Yeah, I understand, like you said, being shocked. I mean, it was a shocking thing. I mean, the day before was normal for what we call normal nowadays. And then that day, it goes from a bunch of crazy people at a rally to storming the castle, so to speak. And in that building, you had at least 2 direct lines of succession for the U.S. government.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to see Secret Service literally snatch the vice president and members of Congress and hide them, right? Some of them off the premises in unidentified locations. So yeah, I get all of that. I'm still going to come back to us and say, how are we going to consume it? How are we going to digest it? And what are we going to do with it? Because our problems have not changed from the 5th. They're still the same struggles and issues from a community level that we already had. So we still have to stay on the game. We still got to stay focused. So I'm like, yeah, all right, cool. That happened. They're going to wrestle with themselves on what they do with it. Now they're talking about impeachment so that they can at least set a precedent for the person who comes behind. They know it can't do anything to this guy. They looked at the 25th, which was never really going to happen. And then in order to help make sure that didn't happen, half of his cabinet resigned. Yeah. So you got all this stuff going on. They're going to do what they're going to do. But one thing, and this is one of the things that Jose was pointing out, I think, is just look at our relationship over time and kind of stay focused on it, right? When Black people get scared, we tend to get quiet. When white people get scared, they tend to kill people. Mm-hmm. Okay? So we are in a violent moment, but right now that violence isn't even pointed at us. It'll work its way back to us, right?
They'll come back.
It's almost like a reprieve at the moment. They'll come back. But right now, they're fighting amongst themselves. It's almost like a Cold War version of the Civil War early on. We got to choose our side. And this time when we choose our side, we need to come in with conditions. We need to be saying, hey, while you're talking about getting all these different reforms in place for the next president and trying to reconcile with these people who just attacked you, we've been loyal the whole time. So this is the time for you to pick up that reparations bill, and y'all need to really debate that. Hey, this is the time that you need to put some teeth in the HUD department so that they can actually help with housing. Hey, this is the time where, yeah, you're going to you have a new Secretary of Education. We want that person to have some more power so that they can actually make some changes. This is the time to actually make our voices louder in the political sphere, because what they don't want is, on top of Trumpists acting a fool, minorities acting a fool too. They don't want that. So I'm just saying that's how I'm viewing it. So
But and then that, to piggyback off of what you were saying, plus if we act a fool, you know how we get down. I mean, from what I was seeing there with, dude that tasing his balls off, and the one that fell off and broke all types of ribs, the shaman or whatever, it was just a lot going on. It was so bizarre too. Like, they're just weirdos, yo. Like,
they attack. First of all, one thing I say is
Dynasty.
They even pushed a woman in there that was in a wheelchair.
Yeah, but you talking about the Nugget lady? She had no age. No disrespect to anybody that's disabled. I love disabled people, but seriously, like, sis, you have no arms and no legs. Where are you going? Like, what's your contribution to the revolution?
But that's just it. That's why one thing I definitely will point out, folks, don't look at those people who stormed that building like that's the army of your opposition. That wasn't who that was. Because when they stormed that building, they stormed it purely out of privilege. Because once they got inside, they did like random violence and took selfies.
Right.
Believe me, they have the people that would do this and do it right.
Right. They took
that's your opposition is out there. It ain't the knuckleheads you seeing that they did.
That's a good point, Theo. Because it was almost like a circus. It's like as tragic as it was, it's just like how weird they were. It just took away from the seriousness of the situation because it was almost like watching a goofy movie. It was like,
those aren't the ones you need to be scared of. See, the ones who did this, it was your normal Trump fan base that you see at all his rallies. And they got hopped up in the moment. Like if you've ever been to like a multi-level marketing event or something like that, they get so full of emotion. Right. And that dude on stage, or if you're at a mega church event, right? The person on stage could almost direct that energy any way they want.
Yeah.
So once Trump directed the energy down the hill, they just went down the hill. And then when they got to the fence and they were making noise, let me in. And then the police who probably sympathize with them are like, yo, there's 5 of us and about 2,000 of them. Let them through. And the next line, I have to deal with them.
But you know what? I actually saw footage of when they first started bum rushing police in the barricades. I actually saw footage of a cop saying, come on. And
But that's what I'm saying. First of all, you have sympathizers. Okay.
Right.
Second of all, he has like almost full police support. Like all the police unions back him. So do you really know police officers came to the rally? I mean, I'll be looking at everybody who took the day off.
I mean, we know we got. Let's talk about that because we know we have some police officers from Georgia. We know we have some from Washington State. We know there were some that were DC local. But the thing about it is, it's like something that my dad keeps saying. It comes back to me. Is that who's read The Art of War? Anybody read that book?
Mm-hmm.
I know you're talking about,
so you know The Art of War. So if you're thinking about this, right? If you really think about this, this has been a plan. I always said it's been a planned coup since the day he was elected in office 4 years ago. Because what that started out, it's the racism is the cancer that's in America that's never been died, that's never been taken out or attempted to be taken out. So it's metastasized throughout our entire government, our system. It's systematic now. That's what we call systematic racism. So it's metastasized itself. And if you are an outside agitator, outside force, and you want to take over a government and get us at our what we perceive ourselves to be at our core thought of us being a great country of everybody gets their chance and equal opportunity and liberty and justice and all that stuff like that. And we can show you to be false and bullshit, then we can destroy you, right? They're right now we're being destroyed in every court of opinion in every country around the world because those pictures, those viral pictures that go across, they don't just stay in the United States, they go everywhere. So the hypocrisy that we face here as Black Americans and here, people are noticing that and they're seeing that, right? And they're saying, well, how can you talk to when we come and negotiate the table with other countries, stuff like that? They say, well, how can you ask us about what we got going in our country when you in your country you've had a 400-year history of this in your country?
Yeah.
But I would say it's not hypocrisy in a way because they've never truly lied. They've been consistent. Like, I think we kind of play the rest of the world
It's
short. The rest of the
hypocrisy.
world knows exactly what America is.
Yeah,
They know
but
exactly what it is.
but they never turned the lie on itself, right? They never the hypocrisy has always been for other people, right? We can do it to other people, but it's never been done to us. I mean, and when I say to us, not mean like black people, I mean like the good old white America, white privilege, right? It's never been turned on themselves. Right now, that's turning, and whatever that outside agitation force is that's turning it, that's what I think it's the coup. That's the coup for our country. We'll never go back to being the same.
Well, I would say I don't
So
think
I'm
we
proud.
won't go back to being the
Yeah.
same. I hope we don't. Um,
We need that change.
well,
Yeah.
we need
We will.
something more than this. So
Yeah.
so like one of the huge difference between a conservative and a liberal is a liberal looks forward to see what more they can achieve, right? And I'm doing this in a very basic way because I have issues with liberalism too. But generally speaking, they're looking forward for what more they can do, what different way we can do this. Whereas conservatives yearn to look backwards, right?
And
So
what
it's
they can
very
keep.
few minorities that can look at the tapestry of America and look backwards and say those were better times, right? So I think a big piece of this is your ideology at play. Not you. I mean, it's ideology at
Hmm.
play, right? So if this had been a bunch of white people who were waving Obama flags, they would have been crushed,
Yeah, of course.
even though
Because
they
they
were white.
equate down. Right. Because no,
Even though they were white.
but it's the same with the civil rights though. You know, black sympathizers, they're of course now you're a traitor to your race. So they could crush you too. You
Exactly.
become black.
Because you're going up against an ideology, which is so much
Yeah.
deeper than just purely race. Because one of the things that Jose put up early is whiteness is not a pure identity, it's an ideology. It's very flexible. Like in America, if you are of the right Asian communities, you're pretty much considered white. If you are Indian, like Indian, you're pretty much white. Now, if you come from some of the other Asian communities, the less desirable ones, they lump you over here with the other minorities. You know what I'm saying? White is a very flexible concept. So even though I have a lot of very stringent ideas, I am starting to morph some of my language to push more on that ideology piece because, man, we got a lot of work to do. And if you don't want us to take this to the streets, then we got to figure out a way to push this through politics and business. And that's, you know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to figure out how. And that's where I like to get more ideas about.
If I may, before I make this point, I wanted to leave something with y'all to view. I don't know if you've seen this yet, but I just got I believe in our family around the world, the diaspora. And I know there's like the Foundational Black Americans and ADOS, and I respect that too because we have a special experience here in the Americas, in the United States of America that's different than everybody else's too. But there's a documentary series that was made by UNESCO, and it's pretty new. It's called History of Africa with a female hostess. It's called With Zainab, Zeinab Badawi.
Hey, spell that again.
Her name is Zainab, Zeinab, and her last name is Badawi, Badawi. It's called History of Africa. It's like a 20-part series, and it goes through the beginnings to now. It covers part of our experience here in the Americas, but it's really focused on Africa. And I bring that up because again, it comes back for me for identity. Even though we have a unique identity here in this country, I like the idea that was brought up that we need to decide how we're going to leverage our positionship because it's been given away for so long. And I'm not a Republican or Democrat. I just refuse to participate in these one-dimensional parties. Um, but I do, I'm glad for you, Georgia, all the Georgians here. Who I don't know who's all the Georgians.
Yes, bravo, Georgia.
Yeah, we all
Yeah,
down here, man.
we're very thankful for your flip, because that was not able to be foreseen. But Stacey Abrams did a tremendous job
Yes, she
with her
did.
effort. I know her and other people who helped her, but that's pretty awesome to be in the middle of all that red and be the only Crip around all those Bloods down there in the South. But what I would say seriously, this is a good time to have a good memory and let that conservative value of the memory in the past kick in, because I would take names right now,
Yes.
and all these Congress people and all the senators. What happened in DC is a violation. This is something we all share. It's our country. Black people, the only people who have the biggest say over this land are the indigenous people who've been marginalized and pushed to the corners of the continent, and you don't even have to see them, because nobody goes to the res almost. Nobody goes to the reservations. And they're the only people who have a claim after them are Black people, white people, the people who've been here. So we have a say here, and that's a straight violation of what happened at the Capitol. I would take names of all the senators, Congress, other officials, those police who were waving people in need to be fired yesterday. Fired.
And charged.
That's right. No, that's right. And there should not be any leniency here. And I would say going forward after the 20th, this is me. This is how I feel, because I'm not into the games and there's no deals. Like Gotti said when he went to prison, he said, no deals. There'll be no deals. Nobody's making no deals with the feds. He didn't allow his family to make a deal to get off of prison time for acts that they know they committed, and we ain't ratting on nobody. No deal.
How you gonna reconcile with somebody who ain't even sorry?
That's exactly right. And that's what I'm saying is the Democrats who have that Senate for 2 years at least, it's Congress and Senate. I wouldn't make any deals with Mitch McConnell. I would bury them. I would ramrod every policy you ever wished you could have brought forward. I would put it all through and make them taste it and eat it all. I would really do it with the vengeance, because they held up for the last 12 years, directly 12 years progress from Barack Obama's inauguration all the way through to Donald Trump. 12 years of just holding up, doing things that are counterproductive to the U.S. citizen, and we allow it. And I'm going to pass the mic real quick, but I want to say this because what we saw in D.C. was also something that may need to happen one day. And I'll say it because our founding fathers said it. And our founding fathers, as brilliant as they were, as hypocritical as they were, these are slave-owning men who talked about freedom and justice and liberty. And they come from the Englishmen. So they know what that meant. They knew they were escaping the monarchies of England. And they knew that they meant freedom and justice, but they were only thinking of themselves. But Thomas Jefferson said something we should always remember. He said, in this country, in order to maintain this style of life and government we have, this applies to everybody. He meant for white men, but this applies for everybody today. He said every generation, about every 25 or 30 years, every generation needs to be prepared, not necessarily, be prepared to turn the country on its back.
Yeah.
To flip it over. And he said it because, there's many reasons we could go over why he said it, but I know the monarchies of Europe and England, where he's from, where his grandfathers are from, that's what they did, is they just passed power to their children, to their friends. They hoarded the power, and it didn't serve the citizens. That's why those white people from England escaped. They didn't come here as regal people. They came running away from England and the hell that they were catching over there. So they came here, and he said that, I'll never forget it, because we've only had one time that happened. That's the Civil War. And we're kind of overdue in terms of generations. And I feel like my weakest judgment says this was not the time for that to happen. This is just white people being dissatisfied.
Just being spoiled.
And this is how they act. It's historically, when Rosewood is a prosperous Black town, they can't take it. Bellingham, Washington, Indians from India had great employment there in 1907, and they rioted and raided that city up by the Canadian border and ran all the Indians into Canada. And there's a history of this. This is not new, but I would just say Thomas Jefferson's words should be remembered, because there is a time and place where this could be necessary. And I just feel like this is not it.